Portland, Oregon. Saturday afternoon, late April. Rain was falling like mist in the late sun. A small backyard in Woodstock, where the wooden fence still smelled of old paint, was the wedding venue for Isabelle Tran and Ethan Miller. There was no custom wedding dress. Isabelle wore a simple white dress she'd ordered online, square neck, half sleeve, linen, ironed the night before. Ethan wore a white shirt, khakis, and a light gray vest borrowed from a friend. There was no MC, no live music, no chef. The party consisted of baked goods from a corner store on Division Street, a few bottles of Prosecco, and close friends, about 20 of them. But they were all smiling. Really. Isabelle looked at Ethan as they stood side by side under a canopy of yellow lights. She thought, no one is clapping. But I don't need to clap. I need someone who dares to stand next to me when I have nothing. Ethan smiled. His hand tightened around hers. As the priest read the vows, a light rain fell on their hair. In a corner of the yard, Ethan's mother, Carla Miller, whispered to her friend, "They said they don't need a dowry." And that's right, that little house doesn't have anything to ask for. Isabelle didn't hear, but she felt the judgment in their eyes. She was familiar with that feeling. The eyes of people who thought silence is resignation. Ethan didn't say much. He just said, "We started from scratch. But maybe that's why we know how to appreciate every little brick." Isabelle nodded. She didn't say it, but in her heart she added, "And I won't forget who was the one who judged each brick." After the wedding, they moved into a small apartment on the ground floor of a suburb in southwest Portland. 1 bedroom, 1 office, also a design studio, a small kitchen with yellow lights. Isabelle named this place the Sea. They didn't have a honeymoon. There was only one Sunday morning after the wedding. Ethan made coffee. Isabelle edited her portfolio photos. And they both opened the first page of their small interior design startup plan, E+I Studio. That evening, Isabelle called home, her parents in San Jose. "Mom and Dad, I'm fine. Everything is very warm." Victor Tran simply said, "If you've made a choice, you have to do it. Don't half-ass it." Lon Tran asked, "Does he understand how hard you've worked to get to where you are today?" Isabelle smiled. "Not yet, Mom. But I'll show him. With my own actions, not with my words." On the other side, Carla Miller also called Robert, her husband, in Tennessee. He married an Asian girl. She's nice and talented, but obviously she doesn't have any dowry. Robert chuckled briefly. "That's even better. We can take care of it ourselves. We don't owe anyone anything." This statement seemed light, but later, Isabelle would remember forever. "Owe no one," meaning they never thought she could contribute anything worthwhile. On the first night after their wedding, after the lights were out, Ethan whispered, "I know we are still poor, but I promise I will not let you lack anything spiritually." Isabelle turned, put her hand on his chest, and slowly said, "I am not afraid of being poor. I am only afraid of becoming rich together, but forgetting who is poor together." That summer, Portland was hotter than usual. The small ground floor apartment had no central air conditioning. There was only one standing fan, always spinning slowly, enough to keep away the sound of insects but not the smell of sweat in the woodworking shop. Isabelle was 4 months pregnant. Her belly wasn't too visible, but her safety shoes were starting to feel tight. She still drove her old Subaru to the construction sites, measured, took photos, and presented her concepts with handmade mood boards. Ethan was good at the technical part, but Isabelle was the one who sold the emotions. She had taste, the language of presentation. The way of talking that made customers believe, I don't just do beauty, I understand what you want. Studio E+I began to have customers. At first, regulars from her network of friends. Then a small cafe that wanted to transform its style. Isabelle stayed up until 2 a.m. every night to render perspectives. The next morning, she went to meetings with a pregnant belly and dark circles under her eyes. The in-laws didn't call, but the mother-in-law sent a short text message the week Isabelle started her 6th month. If you're tired, go back to Tennessee for a few months. I'll take care of you, Ethan. Focus on work. Isabelle didn't respond right away. She was stunned by the implication. Your job now is to give birth, not to do anything. Ethan saw his wife was silent and glanced over. I just want to help. Isabelle replied softly. Help is when people ask you what you need, not when you define the role of others. Ethan was silent. For the second time in his life, he saw that his wife was not as soft as he thought. That night, Isabelle called FaceTime to her mother in San Jose. I'm fine. The studio has a client. Tired but happy. Mrs. Lawn looked at her daughter's face, then asked only one question. Have you started to have anything in your name yet? Isabelle paused. She didn't understand why she asked that. I'm just saying, when women create something from scratch, they should make sure they're not left out when the results come. She nodded, but she didn't quite understand. A few days later, Ethan talked about an interior design project for a Japanese restaurant. They went to see the site together. Isabelle had just gotten out of the car when she got a cramp, so painful that she couldn't stand. Ethan panicked. Isabelle tried to hold it in, sat down on the sidewalk, and nodded. It's probably just a muscle strain. It's okay. Ethan held her hand. If you don't want to go with me on every project, you can stay home. I'll take care of the exterior. Isabelle looked straight at him. No. I've been there from the beginning. I won't back out when it's almost done. A week later, she filed an official application for E+I LLC. In the application, she listed herself as co-owner. Ethan looked at the paperwork, hesitated a bit, but didn't object. It's just a formality, she said. But it's a procedure that keeps people from being left out when they start making money, she thought. Fall came, and Isabelle entered her 8th month of pregnancy. Ethan rearranged the studio into 2 parts, a work corner for her, a small resting area with a rocking chair. They printed out the first photo with a satisfied client and framed it by the door. From 2 hands, and from 2 aching backs. That evening, Isabelle wrote in her diary, No one needs to believe in my dream, except me. But really, what I need most is no one to destroy it. Emma was born one morning in late January, in the typical cold, damp Portland air. Isabelle had a C-section, which was more painful than she thought. For days in the hospital. Then back to the small apartment. Ethan held the baby, fumbling with diapers like a toddler playing with dolls. They didn't hire a nanny. They didn't ask Ethan's mother to fly over. Isabelle didn't call her own mother either. Not out of pride, but because she was used to doing it herself, and didn't want to owe anyone a debt called, I know how to raise a child better than you. The first month, Isabelle barely slept. Emma cried at night. Ethan returned to the studio after 2 weeks. She held the baby while adjusting the perspective on her laptop next to the crib. Once, a client called at 10 a.m. on video. Isabelle was holding the baby in her arms. Isabelle, do you need to postpone the call? The client asked. She smiled. No need. I'm both a mother and a lead designer. That's the default combo this season. The client laughed. But something inside her fell. silently. Ethan seemed relieved to return to work. He went to survey the construction site, met with suppliers, drank coffee, and talked with partners. Every night he came home, he asked Isabelle, "Is the baby good? Are you tired?" Then went to sleep before her. Isabelle started waking up earlier. She breastfed Emma at 5 a.m., then took advantage of an hour of work while the baby slept. At noon, she cooked porridge and answered customer emails. The kitchen corner gradually turned into a place to store the breast pump. The work corner was full of sticky notes with diapers, baby wipes, and forgotten birthday cards. One afternoon, when Ethan came home and found Isabelle asleep at the printer, he sighed, "Why didn't you call me? Let me watch the baby for a bit." Isabelle said nothing. She just looked at him, eyes dark but not angry. "Because if you don't do it yourself, I'm just asking you to do it out of obligation. I need you to see, not me to tell you." Ethan was silent. After a while, he picked up the baby, letting Isabelle take a proper nap after nearly 3 weeks. In the 3rd month after giving birth, Isabelle started taking Emma to the studio every day. She bought a small travel crib, placed it right next to her desk. When the client came, Emma slept. When the client left, Emma cried for her mother. Someone once asked her, "Where is your husband? Why don't you let him look after her?" She just smiled, "Because if I give birth, I'm smart enough to raise her." One day, her mother-in-law called on video. Carla saw Isabelle drawing a design while pushing the crib and frowned. "Isabelle, is there a time? Should I take a few months off?" Isabelle replied softly, "I'm taking a break too, Mom. Quitting the company to build my own company." Carla hesitated. Ethan stood behind, speechless. That night, Isabelle wrote in her notebook, "There is no vacation from motherhood. But being a mother should not be an excuse to be left out of the game." Carla Miller flew from Nashville to Portland on a gloomy Monday morning, carrying a leather suitcase, 2 boxes of homemade cookies, and a small bag with grandchild gifts. Isabelle hugged her grandmother at the airport, still smiling, as wise women learn early on. "I say hello to you. That doesn't mean I'm inviting you into my life." On the first morning, Carla woke at 6. She tiptoed into the kitchen, looking around. It was neat, but not stylized. The coffee hadn't been made. There was an unwashed bottle of milk in the sink. Isabelle was changing Emma's diaper. "Isn't she fed yet?" "Oh my God, Isabelle, it's 6 a.m. Isabelle didn't get mad. She just said evenly, "Emma feeds on her own time. Not on the Tennessee schedule, Mom." Carla was silent, but her face couldn't hide her confusion. The first breakfast consisted of unpeeled avocado, soft-boiled eggs, and whole-grain bread. Carla looked at the plate, then at Isabelle. "Didn't you make anything hot?" Ethan didn't like cold food in the morning since he was little. Isabelle smiled lightly. "Ethan is an adult, Mom. If he wants to eat something, he will know how to cook it." Ethan sat in the middle. "Bite a piece of cake. Say nothing." The second day, Carla took the initiative to clean the living room. She gathered the children's clothes, arranged the blankets and pillows, and vacuumed. Isabelle came home from work and saw that the house was clean, then paused. Carla walked out of the kitchen, wiping her sweat. "You seem to be too busy. Let me take care of these things, okay?" Isabelle replied softly, "Thank you, Mom. But I don't need help. I need someone to respect the way I live." That evening, Ethan asked quietly, "Why are you so tense?" "Mom is just trying to help." Isabelle didn't answer right away. Then, after a few seconds, she turned around. "I'm not tense. I'm just not acting." And if you think I need to act to make my mother happy, then maybe you're the one who needs to talk. On the third day, Carla hinted during the meal, in our family, the daughter-in-law usually stays home to take care of the children for at least a year. That's how women maintain the family's roots. Isabelle put down her chopsticks. She looked straight. In my family, women do both, raise the children and keep their dreams alive. Because a child needs a happy mother, not just a mother who is at home. Carla began to feel tired. Not because she was offended, but because she realized that Isabelle did not fight back, but she did not submit either. She did not protest loudly, but she clearly did not give in. Ethan, all that week, avoided conflict, going to work, working, smiling politely. But inside she began to feel stuck between two worlds. On Friday night, as Carla was packing, she asked Isabelle, "Are you angry with me?" Isabelle looked up from her unfinished sketch. She whispered, "No, but I hope you understand. If you came to see me living differently from you, you saw it. If you came to understand why I live like this, I'm willing to tell you. But if you came to fix me to live like you, then you'll probably be sadder." Carla said nothing. She just looked at her daughter-in-law as if she were seeing her for the first time as a real woman. The next morning, she hugged her granddaughter. She said, when she grows up, she'll probably look a lot like her mother. Isabelle smiled. I hope so too. Studio E+I is in its second year. They have 6 regular clients, 2 big projects, and enough profit to rent a small office out of the garage. Isabelle still does the design and presentation. Ethan does the production and construction. Little Emma goes to daycare half the day. The other half is in the studio, playing on soft rugs, doodling on old designs, and occasionally laughing out loud during Zoom meetings. The work is getting better. But Isabelle doesn't feel any lighter. Because the more Ethan grows, the more he gets recognized. And the more she gets lumped into the vague term, helping wife. One Thursday, the two are invited to a meal at Ethan's cousin, Joanne. The meal is crowded, full of southern dishes, fried chicken, corn on the cob, cornbread, and iced tea. Ethan is happy, talkative, and talks about his new client. Ethan, when did you start your own studio? You're so good, Joanne asks. Ethan smiled. We started it after we got married. Everything you have now is the result of your own efforts. A moment of silence. Isabelle put down her glass of water. No one noticed, but she felt her heart break. She didn't say anything at that time. Still eating, still smiling softly, still hugging Emma. But in her head, only one sentence echoed, "Everything you have now is because of you." When she got home that night, she didn't say anything. Ethan asked, "Are you okay?" She replied, "Fine." But when he went to take a shower, she took out her notebook and wrote, "I thought we were a team, but it seems like I'm the only one who remembers who kicked the ball first." The next day, while doing the end-of-quarter financial report, Isabelle looked at the income and expenditure book. She realized 60% of her customers came from the network she built. She was the one who designed the entire website interface. She was the one who wrote the posts on Instagram. She was the mood board designer for the first showroom. She was the one who carried Emma for 6 months when the studio didn't have a break room yet. She didn't want to take credit. But for the first time, she started to wonder, if I pull out, who will remember I was here? On Saturday night, Ethan asked Isabelle to celebrate a new contract. She wasn't wearing a dress, just jeans and a cardigan. Entering the restaurant, Ethan ordered, She looked around, then asked, "Do you think this studio is yours?" Ethan was surprised. "Oh no. It's ours." "What do you mean?" Isabelle looked straight at him. "So, if someone asked, 'Who built this studio?' what would you say?" Ethan blinked, then smiled slightly. "We built it together." "Who else?" "I just set it out of turn the other day." Isabelle nodded, but she didn't smile back, because in her heart she was not only sad because of the words, but because of the way he did not realize how important it was. That night, she sat in the office, looking at the old drawings. One of them was the first design, the Yuzu Cafe they worked together. The corner of the counter, the corner of the light, the sign, were all drawn by her. But on the current website, the About Us section only said, Ethan Miller, co-founder, lead contractor. Not a single line about her. She quietly emailed Ethan. "Next week, I will separate my name from the construction part. I will focus 100% on the design. If you need, I can give up all the materials and logistics." Not a warning, just a reminder. I am not a background. I am half of everything here. Tennessee, late October. Red maple leaves were falling in gusts along the driveway of the Miller's cabin. Isabelle wore a turtleneck sweater, holding Emma close to her chest, and Ethan dragged 2 small suitcases, laughing as he walked. "Mom always said that fall was the best season here." Isabelle just smiled, but she knew this trip was not just for a week's vacation with the family. Because her mother-in-law had said on the phone, everyone wants to talk about the land. Call it reorganization for the sake of order. Sweet voice, soft words, but Isabelle heard clearly. Reorganization is the arrangement of power, and those who have no voice are automatically sidelined. The living room was lit up early. On the coffee table were pumpkin scones, 2 glasses of iced tea, a thick document neatly placed in white packaging. Isabelle saw it as soon as she entered, placed next to a vase of yellow daisies. No one mentioned it, but it was there like a third person, silently, deliberately. Emma ran towards her grandmother, shouting, "Grandma!" Carla hugged her grandchild, smiling and glancing at Ethan. "This cheek looks exactly like Dad when he was little." Ethan smiled awkwardly, turning to Isabelle. "Mommy said we'd have roast duck tonight. You like it, right?" Isabelle nodded. She didn't ask any more questions. She wanted to let things come when they wanted to show themselves. After dinner, when Emma was asleep and there were only 4 adults around the table, Robert Miller was the one to speak. "You and your husband are living well now, and we're happy. But we still have some things to take care of here." He pushed the white paper towards Ethan. Ethan flipped through it, skimming through it quickly. No surprise. No objection. Carla poured more tea, smiling at Isabelle. "This is just a formality, honey. The land here, the one near Spring Hill, is in our name now, but it will be transferred to Ethan's name later. For convenience." Isabelle kept her expression the same. "What do you mean?" "Ethan will be the only one named." Carla nodded slightly. "Because the land is ours, we keep it according to our husband's line to keep it in order." Isabelle looked at Ethan. No blame. No sarcasm. Just waiting for him to speak. But he just put his hand on hers under the table, as a way to reassure her. "It's okay. This piece is small. Mom just wants to rearrange it," she continued. "And what is the blank part?" Robert replied, calmly. "It's just to confirm that I understand. I have no claim to ownership of that piece of land. It's not legally binding. But to avoid trouble if something unexpected happens in the future, for example." "What kind of unexpected thing?" Isabelle asked. Robert smiled. Well, that's life. A wise person is one who is prepared. The silence lasted about 30 seconds. Isabelle slowly picked up her teacup, sipped it, put it down, and said very quietly, "So, if you prepare for unexpected risks, then I would like to prepare the same." Carla frowned slightly. Isabelle continued, "I will read the papers carefully, and if necessary, I will also send a similar copy to Ethan, because my family also has a piece of land that is about to be divided in San Jose, a little bigger, but the principle should still be the same." The room seemed frozen. Robert tightened his grip on the armrests of the chair. Carla put down her teacup. Ethan turned to Isabelle. "What do you mean?" Isabelle looked straight into his eyes, her voice not high, but clear. "I am saying what you should have said from the beginning. That if I am the wife, then I am also family. No one signs a petition to stay out of the life they have built together." That night, Isabelle stayed up all night. Not because she was angry, but because she saw clearly for the first time. There are things we thought were shared that turned out to be temporary. She wrote in her diary, "When a person remains silent in the face of injustice, it means they find it acceptable. And if I agree to sign today, then what will I still be able to keep in the future?" The next morning, Nashville was cool and sunny. The smell of waffles wafted from the kitchen. Carla was frying bacon. Her face was bright, her hair curled early, and her voice light as if nothing had happened last night. "Isabelle, are you awake? Do you like soft-boiled or hard-boiled eggs?" "I make both." Isabelle paused for a second. She sat down at the table, pulled out a chair, and softly replied, "Thanks, Mom. I can eat both." Ethan sat across from her. His eyes were still dark. All night, Isabelle hadn't looked at him, hadn't blamed him, but hadn't shared like before. No anger, no arguments, just a silence that made others feel like they were playing the wrong role. Emma sat, playing with a Lego in the corner of the room. Carla smiled. Is she always this good every morning? Isabelle must be really tired. Worrying about the studio and the baby. Isabelle smiled softly. "Yes, it's normal, Mom. I'm used to it." Carla nodded, poured more tea. "You know, I was a little tactless yesterday. I just wanted things to be clear. Every family has assets, so we have to figure things out early to avoid any confusion later." Isabelle still smiled, but her eyes did not meet Carla's. "Yes, I understand. My family thinks so too. And I was also taught that when you do big things with someone, you should be clear from the beginning, especially when there is a long-term commitment like marriage." Robert came down from the upper floor. His eyes were colder than usual. He did not say hello. He just pulled out a chair, picked up the newspaper, but did not open it to read. The atmosphere in the kitchen became so tense that it was fragile. But Isabelle did not break it. She just chewed slowly, picked up a piece of egg, drank tea, as if she were in her own home. Ethan suddenly spoke up. "What happened last night? I think we need to clarify. I didn't know my parents had prepared the papers. If I had known, I would have discussed it with you." Isabelle put down her knife and fork. She looked straight at him. "The problem is not whether you knew or not. The problem is, when you saw me being left out, you didn't react." Ethan opened his mouth, but said nothing. When a wife is forced to sign a document to renounce assets, and her husband sits next to her and says nothing, I don't care who prepared it. I just see clearly. The person next to me is silent. Breakfast ended without anyone saying anything more. Ethan took Emma to the backyard to play on the swings. Carla stood washing the dishes. Robert went upstairs. Isabelle went back to her room, opened her laptop, pressed Zoom. On the screen appeared an Asian woman in her 40s, wearing thin-rimmed glasses, Eva Chong, a matrimonial attorney. Her old college friend. I need you to prepare an independent statement of premarital and marital assets, including the San Jose house. Eva raised an eyebrow. Is it finally time for you to use it? Isabelle nodded. Not to scare you. Just to let someone know. If you can accept being left out of his share, then I have the right to keep mine. She hung up, opened her notebook, wrote a single line. If they only see me as a sideline, then I should learn to walk on my own more firmly. That evening, the Miller's house was strangely quiet. No television. No mention of the land. Carla retired to her bedroom early. Robert read the paper on the porch, and Ethan sat on the back steps, Emma asleep on his lap, her head against his chest. Isabelle came back, wearing a pale gray cardigan. She sat down beside him. For a long time, no one spoke. There was only the sound of autumn insects and the breathing of her sleeping daughter. Then Isabelle spoke. Very softly, but not trembling. I used to think that if we loved each other enough, it would be enough to overcome all differences. Ethan was silent. But now I understand that love does not automatically mean protection. Yesterday, when you sat next to me, watching me being put out of ownership, you did not object, did not nod, did not stop. But that silence was an answer. Ethan bowed his head. He pursed his lips, then said in a low voice, I'm sorry. Isabelle nodded. I don't need an apology. I need to understand. What do you think? Do you think it was right? Or do you just think it wasn't worth the fuss? Ethan replied, slowly. I think my parents are just doing what they're used to. They think it's fair. The family land is divided among the sons. And what do you think when what they call fair leaves you out? I know you're upset. But if you don't object, it'll be quieter. Silence. Again. But this time, Isabelle broke it with a sharp, knife-cutting statement. I think quiet means no one is screaming. And you think quiet means no one has to swallow their pain. You say you love me. But love without standing by, that's just love for your own satisfaction. Ethan squeezed his daughter's hand. After a while, he whispered, I never thought of myself as an outsider. I thought that as long as I didn't oppose my parents, I could keep the peace. But now I realize, because I didn't oppose, you had no one to protect you. Isabelle raised her head. Her eyes not wet, but very bright. That's right. I don't need anyone to defend me when I'm wrong. But I need to know. If tomorrow I were pushed out of the house we built with you, what would you say? Because if you just stand there and watch, then you're no different from the one who pushed me out. She stood up, tightened her coat. She looked at him for a long time and then turned away. Before going inside, she only said one sentence. From tomorrow, if you want to keep me, you have to learn to be my person. Not your parents' child. 3 days after that late-night conversation on the porch, Isabelle didn't mention anything. She was still taking care of Emma, still answering client emails, still working on layout ideas for a new music studio in Portland's Pearl District. But there was one small change, one that no one else noticed. She reset the studio's shared email password and opened a new folder called Prenuptial Addendum, Draft. At the same time, Eva Chong, Isabelle's former attorney, emailed a confirmation. The San Jose property, land valued at $15 million, will be legally transferred to Isabelle Tran as a separate estate. The waiver of spousal claim and non-co-ownership are complete. She read the words over and over again, not because of the land, but because she had finally, after years of self-neglect, reclaimed her place in her own life. That evening, Isabelle printed 2 copies of the document, affidavit of separate property signed by her parents, a copy of the post-nuptial agreement, which stated that current assets, including the studio, house, inherited land, would be divided fairly in the event of divorce, and that both parties would respect the agreed separate property. She didn't tremble as she folded the 2 copies into the folder. She just felt at peace. This isn't for divorce. This is for fairness, when words aren't enough. The next day, when Ethan took Emma for a walk, Isabelle placed the file on the kitchen table. Along with a small piece of paper, she wrote by hand, "Read it carefully. No need to answer right away. I don't need your consent right away. Just honesty. Isabelle." That night, Ethan sat alone in the living room. The yellow light cast a cold legal tone. On the left corner of the paper, there was a line, Article 5.2, separate property cannot be divided without the consent of the owner. He read it over and over again. Not angry, not hurt, just feeling diminished, in front of a woman he thought was so gentle that she had no boundaries. Isabelle stood behind the door, not eavesdropping, but sensing the atmosphere. She didn't know how Ethan would react. But she knew one thing. If you sign, then for the first time you're truly on my side. If you don't sign, at least I'll have no illusions. The next morning, while Emma was still asleep, Ethan handed the file back. He didn't say much. He just turned to the last page. Signed. I don't know how long I've disregarded your silence. But if there was ever a time when I stood in the wrong place, this is the first time I've chosen again. Isabelle said nothing. She just smiled. Softly, but deeply. Sunday, a week after Ethan signed the post-nuptial agreement, Carla invited the couple and Emma to the backyard for lunch. No more scones and iced tea. This time it was grilled meat, fresh salad, buttered cornbread, the kind of light party the family usually held when important guests were present. But today, the guest was Isabelle. Carla made lemon tea and brought it out to her daughter-in-law herself, smiling, her eyes still searching. I heard your family has a beautiful piece of land in San Jose. Is it near the university? Isabelle nodded. Yes. Your parents are planning to divide it between you and your brother. It's not that new. Carla nodded. Well, then you two will have more options in the future. Yes. There's also more pressure, because there are many things to protect. Isabelle said softly. Robert sat next to her, not taking his eyes off Ethan. His voice was low, but clear. Did you say anything to your parents about signing the waiver? Ethan replied simply, I signed it. And I think it's right. Carla frowned slightly, but we're husband and wife. Since we belong to each other, why do we need to separate? Isabelle smiled, her eyes not avoiding. Did you think that from the beginning, when you told me to sign the paper not to receive our land? The air was quiet. Only the sound of the fan was left slowly. Robert looked away. Carla pursed her lips. Isabelle continued, I don't blame you. But I see clearly, people only call it sharing when the divided portion is still in the hands of the family. But if outsiders get something, then they call it separation. A moment later, Carla placed her hand on Isabelle's shoulder. Her voice softened. I think, sometimes I'm too principled. I don't want things to happen to us in the future without clear documents. Isabelle smiled. I understand. And that's why I made the paperwork clear from both sides. If only one side asked and the other side had to keep quiet, that's not fair. That's control. Ethan sat next to her, holding her hand, not silent this time. I'm sorry for making Isabelle sign a document I never read. But if you ever thought I could build anything without her, that was wrong. Robert sighed. For the first time, his voice dropped a beat. Maybe you're too used to dividing the family fortune, just to be sure. But you forgot that sometimes. Dividing equally is not as good as dividing correctly. The meal ended. No one apologized explicitly. But Carla started calling Isabelle daughter more often. Robert started asking her for her advice on investing, even if it was just a suggestion. But Isabelle knew, respect doesn't come from crying or being quiet. It's because they know, if you don't get your fair share, they won't get it all. That night, Ethan asked, "Do you feel better?" Isabelle nodded. "I don't need anyone to love me. I just need them to know, if I'm quiet, it doesn't mean I don't know." A week after the tense family meal, the atmosphere at the Miller's house had calmed down. Carla started inviting Isabelle to the morning farmers market. Robert took the initiative to ask about the studio's work. Ethan was more diligent than usual. Isabelle didn't deny those requests. But inside her, there was a thin layer of fog, making her feel like everything around her was being recreated from an edited script. On Saturday morning, while cleaning out the bookcase for Carla, Isabelle suddenly heard voices from the backyard. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop. It was just the glass door that was open, and Carla's voice was clear. "Yeah, now it's precious. There's a piece of San Jose land in our name, and there's a clear contract. It looks like we have to give in first. If we push it now, it'll snap back." Isabelle stopped. Her hand rested on How to Host a Southern Thanksgiving, hardcover, turquoise. But her mind was blank. Carla continued, unaware that someone was listening. "I don't hate her, but to be honest, at first I thought she was just a girl following Ethan. Being a creative person is a shaky job. Who would have thought, huh? Suddenly the in-laws are so strong. Nowadays, you have to choose your words carefully. If the kids break up, Ethan will leave empty-handed." The other person laughed. "Today's daughters-in-law are really scary. They know the rules. They hide their cards. They must have had someone to show them the way." Carla, "Yeah, but luckily she didn't go too far. Just leave her alone. We still need her to keep Ethan in this house." Isabelle quietly closed the bookcase door. No noise. She sat down on the sofa, took a deep breath. She wasn't angry, just cold. Now she knew. All the respect she had just given was because she had something for others to need. Not because they had changed, but because they wanted to control in a new, more subtle way. That night, Isabelle didn't mention anything to Ethan. She only said one sentence, "I want to go back to Portland early. There are some contracts I need to sign directly." Ethan nodded. No further questions. But when she got on the plane, Isabelle didn't look back. Not because she hated her in-laws, but because she understood. Home is not a place where people accept you for who you are. Home is a place where people still stand by you, even when you have nothing left. When she got back to her Portland apartment that night, Isabelle changed the bed sheets, wiped down the desk, and put Emma on the small dining chair. She turned on her computer, logged into the E+I studio system, and opened the About Us section. She deleted the line, "Ethan Miller, founder," and rewrote, "Ethan and Isabelle Miller, co-founders, co-builders, and co-bearers." Just below that, she added her own line, Isabelle Tran, designer. Mother, boundary keeper. 3 days after returning to Portland, Isabelle and Ethan sat across from each other in the living room. Emma was taking a nap. The kitchen light was off. The sunlight slanted through the curtains, illuminating 2 cups of black coffee without sugar on the wooden table. No one spoke, but the atmosphere was clear enough to understand. Any more silence and everything would fall apart. Isabelle put her hand on the rim of the cup. She didn't look Ethan in the eye as she said, "Do you know why I've been quiet all week?" Ethan nodded, softly, "Because I'm tired." Tired not because of work, but because of this relationship. Isabelle smiled, very faintly. "I'm tired because I have to prove my worth in a life that I built with you. I'm tired because I have to not only do it, but also write it down, attach the minutes, sign it to be recognized." Ethan exhaled. He nodded, more slowly this time. "I know. And I also know you didn't do it to keep the property, but to keep yourself. But why didn't you say so earlier?" Isabelle raised her head. Her eyes were clear and bright. "Because I used to think if I had to say it to see, it meant that the person next to me didn't really see." Both fell silent. The room seemed larger, or the distance between them had become more apparent. Ethan spoke slowly. "I used to think that as long as I didn't oppose my mother, didn't impose on you, then I was in the middle. But I realized not opposing doesn't mean siding with anyone. And when you were put out and I sat still, then I was no different from the one who put you out." Isabelle nodded, her voice calm. "That's right. I'm not mad at you for signing the paper. I'm mad because when I needed you to say, no, you thought, let's just get it over with. And that getting it over with could have ended the marriage." Ethan clenched his fists. After a moment, he pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. It was a copy of the prenuptial agreement Isabelle had given him, but this time with a few more handwritten lines. "I pledge to respect not only this property as her own, but also everything she brought into my life, even without papers." He pushed it toward her, not to sign again, but to let you know. "I remember. And I see." Isabelle read, not speaking, but her eyes softened. She placed her hand on his, then said, "Let's start over. But this time, it won't start with love each other. It will start with understanding who each other is, and who has the right to keep themselves in that love." Ethan nodded. No more reasoning was needed, because perhaps, for the first time in their marriage, they had agreed on a common provision. No love is fair if only one side holds the pen. 2 months after the fair talk, E+I Studios switched roles. Now, the company's official name has been updated. Isabelle Tran, Creative Director. Ethan Miller, Project Coordinator and Field Lead. The move was not noisy. There was no press conference. No story. Just a single update in an email to loyal clients. From now on, for any vision-related direction, please connect directly with Isabelle. No one reacted particularly well. But Ethan felt, for the first time, that he was no longer the front man, but the backstage skeleton. The first week, Ethan was not used to it. When clients came to the studio, they asked Isabelle. When there was a demo, they waited for Isabelle to approve. Ethan was in charge of logistics, checking materials, and picking up and dropping off Emma more often. He began to relearn the concept, contributing, without showing up. One day, Ethan took Emma to school, then came home earlier than usual. Isabelle is on a Zoom meeting with a European furniture brand. Her voice is calm, assertive, occasionally interrupting the guests to maintain her point of view. "I understand that's your aesthetic. but our work carries a deeper spatial narrative. If you're looking for just polish, we're not the right studio. Ethan stands outside the room, watching, not intervening, just seeing his wife, who used to be assistant, mother, employee, chef, now narrating a drawing bearing her own name. He doesn't feel hurt, just proud and regretful. Proud that she's standing. Regret that it's been so long, he didn't let her step up sooner. That evening, Isabelle makes tea, sits next to him on the sofa. Are you tired? Ethan nods, but smiles. Not tired from work. Just learning to stand behind. I think I'm used to that feeling, right? Isabelle doesn't say anything. She just holds his hand, squeezes it gently. That night, as Emma slept, Ethan opened his diary for the first time in 3 years. He wrote a single line: "Backing down is not about losing. It's about learning how to lift others up the right way." Isabelle wasn't a dreamer. When she decided to open a branch in San Jose, she had a financial plan, a staffing chart, a list of suppliers, a PR partner, and a plan to convert the structure from a small office to a shared creative space. All of it was neatly contained in a folder named E+I South Bay, Phase 1. She sent the plan to Eva Trang, her lawyer friend, now almost her unofficial strategic assistant. Eva replied immediately, bold, clear, and long overdue. "Let me know when to review the lease draft." But Ethan didn't know. She wanted to tell her when everything was clear. Not to ask for permission, but because she still considered him a companion. One night, after Emma went to bed, Isabelle poured 2 glasses of red wine. Sitting next to him, she said bluntly, "I'm opening a branch in San Jose. On my property. Hybrid. Studio plus showroom plus small workshop." Ethan paused. A deep beat. "You want to move there permanently?" Isabelle shook her head. "No. I still have Portland as my main base. But I need to put a new marker where I belong. I used to give up my name, my role, my reputation. Now I want to put my real name where I grew up." Ethan looked at her for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you want me to come with you?" Isabelle did not answer right away. She pulled a piece of paper from her pocket, a diagram of the new studio layout. "I don't want you to come just because you're my husband. I want you to go if you truly believe that place is worthy of us starting our next chapter, in a new role, a role that is not pre-existing like the past years." Silence. Again. Then Ethan put down his glass. "I don't want to leave Portland, because that's where I started everything again. But I also can't watch you go alone, opening a dream that was supposed to be our dream together. Give me time." Isabelle nodded. "A week. Not because of the pressure, but because the branch is opening in 2 months. I need to know who's on this map." 3 days later, Ethan sent Isabelle an email. No words, just a hand-drawn sketch. It was the new floor plan. An open ground floor, no walls, an exhibition area, a small coffee corner, a play area for the kids. At the bottom, handwritten, "South Bay Layout B2, by Ethan, if I'm still allowed to build it with you." Isabelle opened the email, smiling, not because she had one, but because she finally didn't have to fight. April. Early summer in San Jose. A 1,200 square foot plot of land in the Willow Glen neighborhood is leveled, walled off, and covered with blueprints for E+I Studio South Bay's new project. Isabelle goes to work every morning, leaves home at 7:30, picks up Emma from daycare at 5 o'clock. Ethan stays at home as a makeshift office, designing technical drawings, watching Emma in the morning, making lunch, typing emails to suppliers. The first week, Ethan feels fine. The second week, he starts to feel strange. Not bored, not tired, just smaller. He used to be a machine operator, going to construction sites, talking to investors. Now, he's explaining to Emma why she can't eat chocolate in the morning, printing out contracts for toilet installations, and learning how to make the teriyaki sauce Isabelle loves. One day, he comes to the new office. The foundation is being laid. He stood in the middle of the ground, looking at Isabelle's drawing board on the shelf. Her name was at the top, bold, neat. His name, smaller, under construction consultant. He wasn't upset. It was just, for the first time, he understood how Isabelle had felt in the past 5 years. That night, as Emma slept, he whispered, "I used to think that just doing my part was enough. Now I see, no one wants to live in a house where their name is only on the electrical license." Isabelle smiled. Not a sarcastic smile, but a smile like someone who understood it all too well. "I used to see myself as just keeping the lights on, finishing the cooking, and accepting thank yous with silence. So, if you're feeling that way now, then maybe we're closer together." A week later, Ethan suggested something. "How about you take a break from the construction job for a while? Do internal management, logistics, and branch operations support, so I can focus on the vision." Isabelle was a little surprised. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel like you're being pushed back." Ethan looked at her. "No, it's just the first time I've seen it. The back isn't smaller, just a different angle." They held hands, not in a romantic movie-like moment, but the kind of holding that a business team, a parent, a friend, needs to keep the rhythm. June. Interiors magazine West Coast Living sent an invitation to interview Isabelle. The theme was Women Leading Design in the New Decade. The article will be on the cover of the July issue. The shoot took place in a new studio in San Jose, still smelling of paint, no nameplate, but already equipped with a coffee table, drawing board, and beautiful lighting like an exhibition. Isabelle wore a beige suit, her hair tied back, light pink lips. Ethan wore a charcoal polo shirt, took care of the sound, lighting, and kept Emma playing in the yard. The interview began. The interviewer was a young female editor, Kelly. Her voice was soft but sharp. After a few questions about architecture, clients, and future direction, Kelly smiled and asked, "I have to ask this, because you are the first woman we have interviewed, and the studio has a husband working with you. In your house, who is the pillar?" The question was dropped gently, not maliciously, but enough to make the atmosphere pause for a beat. Isabelle smiled, neither denying nor avoiding. "I used to think a pillar was someone who made more money than I thought, the one whose name was on every sign. But now I believe a pillar is someone who keeps the roof from collapsing, even when the other one is tired." Kelly was silent for a few seconds. Then she nodded, smiling slightly. "So can we say, you and your husband are pillars?" Isabelle replied, firmly, "No, we don't need that title. We have each other. And we have a responsibility, not to let anyone carry all the weight alone." After the shoot, Ethan came in, handing Isabelle a bottle of water. She repeated the question. He just smiled. "I used to think I was a pillar. Then I was afraid I would no longer be anything. But now I think, you're right. A pillar is not a role. It's how you keep the other role from collapsing." That night, while Emma slept, Isabelle opened her laptop and went to the studio website. In our story, she rewrote the introduction. She didn't take Ethan's name out. She didn't push her name to the top. Just added a new sentence at the end. E+I has no pillars. We have pillars and pillars. Sometimes the shoulders shift, but the house stands. At the end of June, Carla texted Ethan, "We're planning on visiting the new studio next week. I hear it's really nice. And you guys are so good. I'm curious." No permission. No questions about convenience. Just an announcement. Typical Carla. Isabelle saw the message as Ethan set the phone on the kitchen table. She didn't say anything. Just asked, "What do you think?" Ethan shrugged. "I think we should show them. Not to prove anything. Just to let them know. We don't have to hide it anymore." The following Saturday, 10 a.m. Carla and Robert arrived at the studio in San Jose. Carla was wearing a floral dress and carrying a Coach bag. Robert had brought Napa Valley wine, a show you've accepted gift. Emma ran out to the playground. Isabelle greeted guests like a professional studio owner. The right smile, the direct gaze, the natural invitation. "Come in, Mom and Dad. We're still finishing the second floor, but the main area is already open." Carla walked in, her eyes scanning the space. High ceilings, whitewood, natural light, concept displays. On the wall was a large lettering. "Vision begins with who you are, not just where you came from." She glanced at Ethan. "Who wrote that?" Ethan replied curtly, "Isabelle." Robert nodded. Looking around. "So neat. Didn't think you'd be so heavy-handed." Isabelle replied, half smiling, "I wasn't heavy-handed. I just didn't pull my hand back." Carla saw the project plan hanging in the corner of the wall. Isabelle's name was at the top. Ethan's name was below. She turned to her son, as if waiting for him to say something. But Ethan looked at his wife, then at his mother, and said softly, "The position isn't as important as who holds it right. And you don't need to be at the top, as long as you're next to the right person." Carla smiled wryly. Robert said nothing. Isabelle didn't need the compliment. She was used to that look. Except, now she didn't need to prove anything. They sat drinking tea. Carla told stories about home. Robert asked a few polite questions. As they left, Carla held Isabelle's hand. "I know I was a little stiff back then, but you're really stiff too." Isabelle squeezed her hand gently, "Because if I wasn't stiff, I wouldn't be here to hear this." That night, Ethan and Isabelle lay side by side. No one said anything. Just a comfortable silence. Like climbing an old mountain with new legs. San Jose. Late at night. Emma is asleep. Ethan is reading in the living room. Isabelle sits in her small office behind the kitchen, the soft yellow light of her desk lamp illuminating her paper. She writes with a fountain pen, something she rarely uses after everything has moved to emails, PDFs, scanned contracts. But tonight, she's not writing to investors. Not to clients. But to someone who will grow up with the feet she's teaching her to walk every day. Dear Emma, when you read this, you'll be older than 16. Maybe you're thinking about your career. Maybe you're thinking about love. Or wondering, who am I? And why I always tell you to be independent, to the point of being a little cold. I don't want you to be a stubborn woman. But I want you to be strong. Strong enough not to be pushed back just because someone is louder. I lived for a long time thinking that silence was gentle. That giving in is love. And that if you are kind enough, others will not hurt you. But Mom was wrong. Not everyone sees your worth, even those who say they love you. And if you don't see your worth, you will let others name it when they need you to fit into their position. I once let myself shrink in a marriage, cut my name off the sign, stepped back when people said women should be humble, until I understood that The person who holds the whole house is not necessarily the one holding the map. The person who silently cleans the yard, adjusts the door, changes the lock, can also be the one supporting the dream. Emma, if you love someone in the future, love with all your heart. But don't give the copyright of your life to someone just because they say, I can take care of it. No one can take care of you better than you. And the person who deserves to be with you is the one who makes you feel grown up, not smaller. You don't need to earn the most money. You don't need to own the biggest house. You don't need to be the model of a woman who can do it all. You just need to be clear enough not to trade your self-respect for comfort, and strong enough to know no one is a pillar if the other person always has to shrink. I used to think that the most important thing was to protect you. But now I know the most important thing is to teach you to protect yourself. If you can do that, then I can go anywhere without fear of losing you, no matter how many maps life changes. I love you, and always believe you won't need anyone to define what you are, to know who you are. Mom, Isabelle. The land was located at the corner of Kirtner Avenue and Meridian in South San Jose. It had once been Isabelle's grandparents' garden, where she'd played hide-and-seek, where her father had planted plum trees when he was alive. Now it was next to a new tech complex, and suddenly it was a lucrative proposition. A real estate developer had made an offer for more than $18 million, nearly double the original estimate. The news came on a Thursday afternoon. Isabelle was working on the showroom floor plan when she got a call from her mother's sister, Aunt Rachel. Isabelle, do you have time to talk? I can see you're busy, but maybe we should decide soon. It's about the land. We've had a family meeting. Someone has made a high offer. I think we should sell. Isabelle listened. She didn't answer right away. We had a family meeting. Who were the people? Well, my aunt, Uncle Ben, my cousins. They care. Isabelle smiled faintly. Thank you, Auntie. But that land is in my name. And my father's share is legally divided to me. 3 days later, Isabelle received an email from a strange lawyer on behalf of a group of relatives requesting a review of the land ownership. The reason? Inheritance belongs to the whole family, not to one individual. Isabelle forwarded the email to Ava Chang. Just 15 minutes later, Ava called back. Ridiculous. They have no basis. And, if necessary, we will respond strongly. Isabelle told Ethan that evening as they sat with Emma coloring. Ethan asked, "What do you want to do? Keep the land, countersue, or negotiate?" Isabelle pondered. Then, slowly, she replied, "I used to think blood was the last thing that needed a lawyer to intervene. But now I understand. Because it's blood, people think they have more rights than the law." The next morning, Isabelle emailed her entire family, including Ava. "I cherish the memories, but I ask permission not to share what was given to me by law and my parents in the right way. If anyone feels it's unfair, I'm willing to meet in the lawyer's office, not the living room." The meeting was held on a Wednesday afternoon at Ava's office in Palo Alto. No living room, no juice or warm towels. Just a wooden table, papers, and silence between people who used to call each other aunt, niece, auntie, auntie. Sitting across from Isabelle were Aunt Rachel, Uncle Ben, and 2 cousins. No one had brought a lawyer. They thought this was just family talk. Ava opened the meeting, firm but polite. "I am the legal representative of Isabelle Tran Miller. We are here today to clarify the legal ownership of the lot in San Jose, according to the will that was probated in 2019. If anyone has any other complaints, please present them here or in writing." And Rachel blushed slightly. She looked at Isabelle, speaking in a softer tone than usual. I don't mean to fight. It's just, your father didn't think of leaving it all to one person? After all, this is the property left by our ancestors. Isabelle smiled. Not coldly, just very clearly. I understand. And I don't blame people for wanting to discuss it. But when someone thinks that ancestors are a reason to override personal ownership, it's no longer a request. It's an imposition. A cousin interjected, his voice a little harsh. We're relatives. Why do we need lawyers? Act like strangers. Isabelle nodded, because when people think they're blood relatives, they easily think they have more power than the law. I don't use lawyers to win anyone over. I just want to remind everyone, if a relationship doesn't respect boundaries, then it's no longer a relationship. The atmosphere was tense. Uncle Ben sighed, then said softly, if your father left it clearly, then that's fine. But don't keep it to yourself. Family will see each other for the rest of our lives. Isabelle nodded. Because we will see each other, I wanted to meet today, so that we don't have to hide anything from each other in the future. The meeting ended in less than an hour. No one got angry. No one shed tears. But everyone understood. Today, Isabelle didn't come to give up. She came to reestablish one thing. There is no relative close enough to turn someone else's ownership into something to negotiate. That evening, Isabelle sat next to Emma, who was drawing. She drew a house, with a fence, with a nameplate. Ethan looked at the drawing, then asked Isabelle, do you feel sad? Having to use your signature to keep something that used to belong to your memory. Isabelle replied, her voice soft, I am sad, because I used to think that family love is something that has no boundaries. But now I see, it is because we value love, that we need clear boundaries. Otherwise, people will cross it without knowing. One late summer morning, Isabelle returned to her old home in Willow Glen. The early morning sun shone through the canopy of the old plum tree. The plum tree her father had planted, now only bare branches, half grown with rocks and weeds. Ethan drove her there, then retreated to give mother and daughter some privacy. Isabelle carried Emma down, standing looking at the yard that used to be a lawn, where she and her brother used to ride their red plastic bikes. Mom, is this your house when you were little? Isabelle nodded, sitting down next to her. Yes. Grandma used to make lemonade over there. And over there is the chrysanthemum tree that your mother and Uncle Daniel used to plant. Emma rested her chin on her hand, looking around. There's nothing left now. Isabelle smiled. Not sad, not regretful. There's no house, no people. But if you close your eyes, you can still see everything. Because the real home, not somewhere, but where you remember. That evening, Isabelle reopened the land sale. The developer's offer was hanging at the top of her email, with the following number. $18. For $1 million, for the entire family's old land. She looked at the number. There was no hesitation in the value. Only a question quietly appeared. If I keep it, can I bring back the memories? If I sell it, what am I giving up? She closed her laptop, pulled out a thin notebook, and wrote, memories are not in the land. They are in the person who survives them. If a piece of land can be exchanged for lasting peace, then maybe it's worth it. The following week, Isabelle sent an official response to the real estate company. I agree to sell, but on one condition. A 300 square meters portion of the land will be kept, planned as a community memorial area, named Trang Garden after my mother. I will pay for the design and supervise the construction. And I hope it becomes a place where people with pasts, good or bad, can sit down without asking anyone's permission. Ethan read the email. He said nothing. He just kissed her shoulder and whispered, "You didn't lose anything. Just moved everything from memory to action." Isabelle smiled, and for the first time in months, felt truly light. 3 months later, Trang Garden was completed. The 300 square meters corner, located in the middle of the new planning area, was designed as a pause in the hurried city. There were rows of wooden benches. There were white bougainvillea trellises. There were old stone walkways and a small bronze plaque engraved with the words, "For those whose memories are heavier than their bags, you don't have to put them down. You just have to rest." The opening ceremony took place early Sunday morning. No fanfare. No band. There were only people in the neighborhood, a few curious young people, a group of middle-aged women holding lavender, and those who had heard Isabelle talk about her mother, Mrs. Tran my Trang. Isabelle spoke a few words. Emma stood next to her, wearing a white dress. Ethan stood behind, hands clasped. Not pushing the stage, but standing as if it were his role, a co-creator, not a main character. After the ceremony, everyone sat quietly. A middle-aged woman approached Isabelle. Her eyes were reserved. She held a bouquet of daisies. "You're Isabelle, right? I was an old friend of your mother's in high school. I didn't keep in touch afterwards. But when I heard about Trang Garden, I came." Isabelle nodded, inviting her to sit. She took an old photo from her bag, her mother, 17, smiling brightly beside her bicycle. "Your mother used to be very strong," the woman said. "But you know, after getting married, your mother changed a lot. We used to joke, Trang is now a person who lives like a shadow." Isabelle listened, silent, then softly replied, "My mother has a lot of darkness, but sometimes she is also my light." As the afternoon fell, everyone quietly left. Isabelle was packing up the papers when she saw a man sitting alone at the end of the garden. He was wearing a dark sweater, a hat, and his back was turned. She walked closer, then stopped. It was Uncle Ben, the one who had stood at the family meeting, the one who had said that we should divide equally because we were relatives. Isabelle hesitated a bit, but then she walked over. Not because he needed her forgiveness, but because she didn't need to keep anything to hurt herself. "You came early?" Uncle Ben nodded, not turning his head. "I didn't come for the land. I came for the person who cleaned up that land without complaining. It was your mother. Back then, I was younger than Trang. I used to destroy things. But Trang never said anything harsh. Later, I never apologized either, because I thought blood relatives were unnecessary." Isabelle sat down next to him. A deep sigh, then she said, "Blood relatives are not free. If there is no respect, then you are taking advantage." Uncle Ben nodded. He turned to look at her for the first time. His eyes were dry, but he did not avoid, "You are like your mother. But you dare to say what your mother did not dare. Trang Garden should be named after both of you." Isabelle shook her head, smiling. "I think that is enough. Because I used to not dare to say it either, like my mother. Now, being able to say it is enough." When it was getting dark, Isabelle picked Emma up. Ethan was waiting in the car. She looked back at the garden. No house, no old people, just a place where one could come, sit down, and no one would ask, "Are you sure you should forgive?" Fall. South Bay Studio is stable. Isabelle moves into the role of Creative Director, working 4 days a week, spending more time with Emma. Emma is now 6. She asks a lot, loves to draw, loves the color purple. and has a very adult hobby. Mommy, what were you most afraid of when you were young? The question came one Saturday afternoon, when mother and daughter were painting a small wooden box intended as a happy secrets box. Isabelle paused for a few seconds. She smiled, not reflexively, but as if she had been waiting for this question for a long time. I was afraid I wasn't enough. Emma tilted her head. Not enough of what, Mom? Not good enough. Not kind enough. Not gentle enough. Not important enough to the people I loved. But then I understood. No one has to have it all. Just enough self-confidence. And enough composure not to trade kindness for recognition. At night, while Emma slept, Isabelle sat in front of her laptop, opening an old folder called Personal Notes. She began to retype each memory, not to post, not to write a book, but to keep. Passages she had deleted for fear of being misunderstood. Lines she had written halfway through and then escaped. This time, she wrote everything. I used to be a silent daughter-in-law. A wife who held back. A daughter who didn't make a big deal out of it. But in each of those roles, I gradually lost myself. I took back a part of myself, not because anyone gave me permission, but because I stopped and asked, if this life is home, where do I want to stand? A week later, Isabelle accepted an invitation from a nonprofit that helps women rebuild their lives after divorce. The topic, redefining success when you no longer want to beat anyone. For the first time, she agreed to be the main guest, with one request. I will not share my record. I will only share the times I didn't speak up, and what happened next. That night, Ethan asked her, "Are you scared?" Telling everything. Isabelle shook her head. No, because now I have nothing to hide. Everything I keep, not to defend, but to nurture. The sharing took place in a small hall in San Francisco. On stage was a sofa, a coffee table, lavender. About 60 women sat below. They were not alike in age or appearance, but they had the same look in their eyes. They had forgotten who they were because of someone. Emma sat in the front row, drawing books in her hands. Ethan didn't move, not to avoid her, but to give her and her fellow travelers space. When introduced, Isabelle stepped forward. No suit, no PowerPoint, just a real person, sitting down, pulling out a small piece of paper. I have this with me, a list of the women I used to be, and I think they deserve to be mentioned. She read slowly. The 25-year-old woman who believed that love was enough to build a family. The 29-year-old woman who thought, I have to shrink to keep my happiness. The 31-year-old woman who sat in the bathroom, crying without making a sound, because she didn't want to bother anyone. The 33-year-old woman who signed divorce papers, not because she no longer loved, but because she was no longer herself. And the 35-year-old woman who learned to say no, not by being grumpy, but by setting clear boundaries. The hall was silent. A few people nodded. Some wiped away tears. Isabelle looked at them, then smiled. I don't want to abandon any of the women on that list, because each of those roles taught me how much I can handle, and what I deserve more. She turned to look at Emma, who was drawing her mother standing on a podium, with the words written below. Mother, storyteller to those who have never had stories. Isabelle paused. She placed her hand on her heart, then continued asterisk asterisk. I'm not here to tell you how to be successful. I just want to remind you, if you feel weak, useless, or unlovable today, remember, it's just the woman inside you who's tired, not the whole you. The whole room stood up and applauded, not wildly, not for show, but with a deep appreciation. Isabelle bowed slightly. Emma ran up and hugged her mother from behind. She whispered, "When I grow up, I can be anyone, as long as I'm not someone who has to ask permission to be true to myself." The following spring, E+I Studio was nominated as one of the top 10 creative design firms to expand their franchises in major cities: Denver, Austin, Miami. An investment group offered to buy 60% of the shares in exchange for opening 5 branches in 2 years. Total value of the deal, more than $25 million. Ethan was quite excited. Ava advised to consider it. Emma drew another E+I in New York on the toy map. As for Isabelle, silent. One morning, she arrived at the studio early. No lights on. She walked past every corner of the table, every piece of wood, the places she had cut, painted, and joined when she was just an unpaid assistant to her own dream. Then she sat down on the corner of the small balcony, where there was a wooden chair that Ethan had made himself. Opening her notebook, she wrote, "I don't need to go very far to see myself succeed. I just need to stand still for a while and find myself no longer tired from trying." That evening, she called Ethan out to the yard, where they sat together at a small wooden table. Emma was sleeping. The wind was gentle. No phone calls. No report slides. Isabelle held her husband's hand. "I've thought it through. I don't want to expand. Not because I'm afraid. Not because I lack confidence. But because I don't want to measure things by size anymore." Ethan paused for a moment, then nodded. "I thought you would choose growth. I choose sufficiency. Because in the end, I didn't build the studio to beat anyone. I built it to never lose to myself." 3 weeks later, Isabelle sent an official email rejecting the deal. No lengthy reason. Just one line: "Our vision was never about going big. It was about being real and staying close enough to feel it." That year, Emma turned 7. She began to write in her diary. The first page read, "My mother said, I can be whoever I want to be, as long as I'm not someone else has chosen for me." Finally, Isabelle stood in the middle of the sunny studio, looking around. Smiling, not because everything was perfect, but because, for the first time, everything was in place. Her, Ethan, Emma, and the parts of her that had been rejected were here, living together. No longer hidden,